Thank you, Bernie. We truly appreciate the partnership and collaboration that your unit supports us with strategic and innovative equity and diversity work. Colonel Pam Mindt recently retired after serving over 38 years in the reserve component of the United States Army. Colonel Mindt, who has a master's degree in social work and is a licensed clinical social worker, has been deployed multiple times in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Over the years, she's received numerous awards for her service, including the Bronze Star and Meritorious Service Medal. In addition to her military service, Colonel Mindt worked in the civilian sector in multiple areas: corrections, community justice, human services, and Veterans Affairs. In 1987, she was recognized by the Anoka County Commissioner for her efforts to save 22 juveniles from a fire that destroyed the Anoka County Juvenile Center. Over the years, she has worked diligently to improve the lives of others, and in 1993, she was awarded the Brian Coyle Leadership Award and named Public Citizen of the Year by the Minnesota chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. She currently lives in Oregon with her wife Ginger, their 6 dogs, 2 cats, and 1 bird. We are delighted to have her serve as our keynote speaker this year. Please help me welcome Colonel Pam Mindt.
Good morning. It is a great day to be alive. It is a great day to come together to celebrate, embrace, promote, and sustain diversity. It is truly a great day to honor each other. Before I begin, I'd like to give thanks to Lisa, who provides audio to my words to those who may have trouble hearing. To those who may not be able to see, I am not in uniform. I do have a black and white dress on, and I look really nice, if you ask me. I spent about 10 years of the last 12 in uniform, combat boots, battle armor, so to be able to go online and pick a dress out was a major accomplishment. And shoes. Thank you, Ginger, for helping. I want to draw attention, as was already previously drawn attention, to the red poppies. Red poppies come out on Veterans Day, they come out on Memorial Day, reminding us of those who spilled their blood and gave their all in the service to this great country. We're here and supported by a military, by those who gave and those of us who served and continue to serve. Last Thursday, I received an invitation from the Eastmont Community School in Bend, Oregon, to have lunch with their students. Each year, preschool through 5th grade students write letters, make cards, and draw pictures for veterans to let us know how much they appreciate us. This picture was sent to me, was colored by Kai in Mrs. Weber's kindergarten class. I want to acknowledge what a great honor it has and is to have served this nation, and how a great honor to be appreciated by the future of this great nation. Veterans Day originated as Armistice Day. Armistice Day marked the end of hostilities of World War I, which occurred at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month. Later, after the wars in Korea and Vietnam, a decision was made to honor all veterans, to give thanks and recognize their selfless service. Over the years, some were called to serve with natural disasters, to protect the borders, to combat zones, to foreign countries such as Somalia and Grenada. The common element is that these individuals, at a moment's notice, would leave the comforts of their family, of their home, to go to support and defend. As a veteran with multiple deployments, 2 of which were in combat zones, I have mixed emotions about speaking today. My initial feelings when asked were surprise, feeling honored, and then excited. However, after accepting the invitation, I said to myself, what have I done? I didn't exactly say that, but I can't say the F word, but what have I done? I agreed to fly to Minneapolis, be in a room with over 550 people, most who quite possibly have never served in the armed forces. Therefore, they were civilians. I believed I was going to be a fish out of water. Many have negative views of the military. It is a complex organization. But please note, the military has never started a war, nor have we ever asked for a deployment. There are those who have behaved poorly, and there are those who have behaved honorably. Unfortunately, the ones who behave poorly get the press coverage. Today's media will highlight a construction project that went over budget in Afghanistan, but failed to mention the many schools, roads, infrastructures that were built on or near budget. Citizens of the United States do not hear of the medical expertise that is shared or provided to citizens of war-torn nations, the care to the school-aged children who were poisoned because they attended school, or the burns of children that were debrided because they sustained wounds when there was an explosion occurred while their families were cooking with gasoline. Compassionate acts are not news. However, these acts, and so much more, are the reality of today's militia. Yet, in the face of all this anxiety, I remained focused on my mission. Time was spent with my therapist. Really? I have her on speed dial. Time was spent talking to Ginger. Who am I questioned. What do I have to offer? While I have been brave, I have also hurt others. I have thought, said, and done things I imagined I never would. As I was mulling this over, I remembered the Department of Minnesota's Diversity and Equities Framework, their vision framework, this alive document, this valuable document, that plots out their strategic plan. And in that, one of their core values is transformation through self-examination. Let's say it again. Transformation through self-examination. In order to appreciate one's place, a thoughtful review of oneself must occur. Thus, as I prepared for today, I identified one personal goal and two professional goals. My personal goal was simple. Make it through 10 to 12 minutes of a keynote without using the F word. So far, so good. Of course, I've been checking here because I'm going to go over 12 minutes and I want to make sure that I don't fall through the ground because Anitra said I got 12 minutes, so this is solid here. My professional goals were to relate two things. One, as a nation, we must find a common ground. Number two, life is precious. As a nation, we must find a common ground. Learn to value the uniqueness of each other but we have to remember to have a common goal, a common experience. When the country moved from an active draft to volunteer service, who enlisted in the Army or the military? I enlisted in the Army Reserve when I was 17. At that time, the Army Reserve was offering 50% tuition reimbursement, and I wanted to go to college. My father had died when I was young, and my mother was a teacher with 4 children. We were dirt poor. So I saw no other way. Others enlisted due to family tradition. As one soldier, Staff Sergeant Hovano Graves, responded when asked why he joined. In our family, there is a deep sense that being Americans means serving. Show gratitude by giving back to your country. Economic necessity, family tradition. With the disappearance of the active draft, the complexion of the military changed, and there have been unexpected consequences. There is a growing gap between the military and the civilian populations. In the past, over 60% of the Ivy League graduates entered the military. Now it's less than 1%. Pulling numbers from the document entitled Membership of the 113th Congress, I quote, "At the beginning of the 113th Congress, that's 2013-2014, there were 108 members, or 20%, who had served. The numbers of veterans in the 113th is showing a steady decline in recent decades. For example, 64% of the members of the 97th Congress, that's 1981-1982, were veterans. In the 92nd Congress, 1971 and 1972, 73% were members, a steady decline. Currently, less than 0.5% of the United States population serve in the military. I say again, less than 0.5% of the United States population serve in the military. Today, only 7.3%. And if you remember the individuals who stood who are either serving or veterans, there were very few. Less than 7.3% of all Americans have served in the military at some point in their lives. Fewer and fewer citizens of the United States are serving and have had contact with those of us who do or did. The citizenry of this great country are missing an opportunity to understand sacrifice and witness a strong sense of duty. As stated eloquently by Kathy Roth-Duquet and Frank Schaefer in their book, and I encourage people, if you haven't a chance to read it, AWOL, The Unexcused Absence of America's Upper Classes from the Military Service and How It Hurts Our Country. They state, it is a class issue. Small-town, religious, and middle class from either party is more likely to have someone in the military in their extended social group than wealthy partisans. Since the end of the draft, we have had over 144 deployments. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have lasted over 12 years. During that time, many service members were deployed multiple times. In fact, as of 2013, nearly 37,000 Americans had been deployed more than 5 times. Among them, 10,000 members of Guard and Reserve units. Records also show that over 400,000 service members have done 3 or more deployments. With the disappearance of the active draft, the advancements in technology, and limited media coverage, the general public is left without understanding of what has or is occurring. Mike Haney, director of the Institute for Veterans Affairs and Military Families, stated it best. We have disconnected the effects of war from the American public. Furthermore, during past wars, leaders often called for the public to sacrifice to help with the war effort. Hear that silence? No such requests have been made during the wars of Afghanistan and Iraq. As a soldier, in the melting pot of the military, when the fight is on, we care little about political affiliation, color of one's skin, economic status, gender, or sexual orientation. We are focused on surviving. We experience a truth that the general public does not know. I can tell you with great certainty that when it was announced in 2003 that the mission was accomplished in Iraq, there were service members still dying. I can tell you, while it was announced that the global war on terrorism was over, there were service members still dying, still deploying. As a nation, we have become complacent and out of touch with the sacrifices, the duty to our country. As we strive to understand and value our differences, we must find a common ground. A recent post on social media said it best. Does the right wing and the left wing know they are of the same bird? As we struggle to honor each other, do we remember that our Constitution affords us this luxury? Back in 1776, this nation born of war, a committee was appointed to create our new nation's motto, believed that we must come together. The motto they proposed was E pluribus unum, which describes in action, many united as one. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said it most eloquently, "Ask not what this country can do for you. Ask, what can I do for this country?" So I encourage you, as you have your discussions, as you address the question, how do we become more inclusive, mention service to our great nation. Suggest that perhaps it's time for all of us to give back. Talk of the military, talk of the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, talk of service, talk of duty. Now, moving to my second professional goal, we are all valuable because we draw breath. We breathe. Life is precious. I'm going to ask you to stick with me for a few more minutes. I'm going to ask that we all take a moment and look at those around us. Get more comfortable in your seats. Take a breath. And look at those who've chosen to be here. We are sharing a moment in time. I was 43 years old when I first deployed. I was mobilized February 22nd and reported for duty March 1st of 2003. I left my home. From March 2003 to my retirement on 21st of June of 2015, I spent all but 2 years on active duty. It was during that time that I truly grew up. To emphasize the notion that life is precious, I have 2 stories to tell you. This is the applied section of my keynote. See, academic, applied. Trying to appeal to the university scene. How am I doing? Okay. I'm almost done, Anitra. Don't pull me off yet. I hope during these stories you can feel the bind that those of us who serve experience, but would not change. When you're a member of the armed services and you deploy, you miss important dates, weddings, graduations, or the birth and often the death of loved ones. I was in southern Iraq I was a commander in Iraq and Afghanistan of a combat stress control detachment. So as a commander, I had several forward deployed teams. We would offer behavioral health services to service members. And so we had several forward deployed teams. In Iraq, we covered the southern part of it, about 125,000 square miles, so I traveled extensively. I happened to be in southern Iraq visiting one of those detachment's forward deployed teams when I received word that my mother was deteriorating. Prior to this deployment, I'd already been deployed stateside into Guantanamo Bay. I was then mobilized for Iraq. My mother was heartbroken. She was concerned, and she had a passionate dislike of the current president. She was aging, had diabetes that was destroying her quality of life, destroying her kidneys. I flew to see her one last time before deploying, and we made a pact. I told her I would make it back, and she said she would live to welcome me home. In February of 2006, I deployed forward to Iraq. In March, my mother had surgery to place a shunt in her arm for dialysis. After the surgery, while at home, she fell and broke her humerus. It's a bone and arm for people who don't understand medical or know that that's the humerus. She was too weak for surgery, and an infection set in. My mother was hospitalized. Over satellite phones and via emails, my siblings briefed me. She was refusing to eat, wanted no more dialysis, and she was tired. I said, let her go. They said, we could keep her alive till you make it back. I said, let her go. My mom, who had been so strong and vibrant in her life, deserved a peaceful death. I asked them to hold the phone to her ear, and I told her, it's okay. Go and know that I'll see you again someday. Over the next few days, without dialysis, without IVs to sustain her, and only drugs to make her comfortable, she slipped away. Before I tell the second story, I need to say I have permission from the two individuals I talk about. Missy is the concerned stateside mother, and Specialist Nelson, the brave warrior who was on his first deployment. During my last deployment to Afghanistan, that was in 2012, I was asked by a mom she happened to work at the vet clinic where I take all of our animals. She was concerned about her son who had deployed with the 82nd Airborne. She was concerned and she said, will you find him? You know, I'm good, but Afghanistan's a big country and I didn't know for sure where he was going to be. He was not communicating like he used to. Every parent's nightmare became her reality. The hardest part of being a parent is watching a child go through something really tough and not being able to fix it for them. Her son was in a squadron that had been conducting dismounted patrols, and for those of you who don't know what dismounted patrols were, they were going through the fields, patrolling the fields, and there was a lot of IEDs in the grounds, and they were just having to go through fields on a regular basis, patrolling them. And several of his buddies had been injured. Loss of legs, loss of body parts, and one had recently been killed. As luck or the grace of a higher being would have it, he was in my detachment's area of responsibility. The 82nd had a great chaplain who'd requested additional behavioral health support for his flock. As a commander, I visited the 4 deployed teams and was able to go on the mission that the chaplain had requested. I was on my way. We arrived in the forward area, and I walked towards the troops. For those of you not familiar with the military, a higher-ranking individual is usually saluted by a lower-ranking individual, and even though we were in combat, the rules of engagement, the rules covering that was they still saluted a higher officer. So as I walked, I was there to assist, but I also had a personal mission: find Specialist Nelson, Missy's son. He had been told I was fighting my way to him, and out of the group of soldiers stepped a brave young man, a specialist, Specialist Nelson. He saluted me, I saluted him. Then I broke military protocol, and I did what his mom asked of me. I pulled him close, and I hugged him. I stayed for 2 days talking with him and his buddies, his leaders, taking pictures of him getting a battlefield haircut. I could provide proof to his mom, Missy, that he was still alive. And in that moment of touch, when I held him close, I was able to communicate he was loved at home. Each one of us who has served and is serving is someone's son or daughter. Someone loves us. In fact, we are children of this great nation. When we are deployed, in order to survive, we must be proficient in our warrior's task. We have acute attention to detail, little tolerance for mistakes, and a need to control. Being late, missing a turn, could mean death. It is hard to shut down these beliefs. During the last 90 days of a deployment, we can't wait to get home. We think of how we're going to do things differently, how we will spend our days. We return home. For the first 90 to 180 days, it's good. We come back, but then, meetings don't start on time here. Maybe they do in Minnesota, I don't know. There's indecision in the grocery store. You ever see anybody there? Like, come on, you got your list, buy your stuff. No common thread with those around us, and we're dealing with a degree of pain we never knew possible. Then, a high percentage of us can't wait to go back. To explain it away as being hooked on adrenaline is simple-minded. It is a myriad of reasons why we would go back: monofocus, the bond of a squad, a platoon, an unspoken belief that our being willing to sacrifice for others is the most noble thing we have ever done and will ever do. Toby Keith, in his song, American Soldier, summed up our attitudes in his lyrics. One section of the song says, "You can bet that I stand ready when the wolf growls at the door. Hey, I'm solid. Hey, I'm steady. Hey, I'm true down to the core. And I will always do my duty no matter what the price. I've counted up the cost. I know the sacrifice. Oh, I don't want to die for you. But if dying's asked of me, I'll bear that cross with honor, 'cause freedom don't come free." In closing, transformation through self-examination, having those hard discussions on what it means to be inclusive and how we must conduct ourselves to make this happen, is critical to the survival of this nation. Our Constitution is a document that protects the minority from the majority. Our Constitution is a living document that guarantees the freedom of all citizens. When discussing what we can do to be better, I encourage you to include what we can do to give back to this great nation. We need a common experience, a common goal. In the end, remember, freedom don't come free. I believe we live in one of the most remarkable of countries. We are all quite fortunate, and we all must give back. I can truly say, if my body was still able, and there was a need in this country, I would do the following again. I, Pamela Sue Mindt, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Thank you.